Welcome to the newest episode of Beatin' and Bangin'. I'm your host, Kyle Dalton. In today's video, we'll be reviewing the weekend at Watkins Glen, including, as mentioned in Friday's video, numerous drivers and others in the industry sharing their top 3 things on the first 100 races of the next-gen Gen 7 car after Watkins Glen. Plus, we'll discuss what Joey Logano had to say to reporters about the panic in the Ford camp earlier this year after the ugly start, and how the Blue Ovals have put up impressive numbers since. We'll also take a look at the behavior of Ty Gibbs before the race and his unexpected move with a camera person, which interestingly enough isn't the first time that's happened. And of course, I'll break down the entertaining race that started with a crash on lap 1 and ended with Buescher winning in overtime after a wild last lap pass of Shane van Gisbergen. However, before we get to that, I want to talk about today's sponsor, Pristine Marketplace. You've heard me talk about these guys in the past, and many of you entered into my contest to win the Kevin Harvick helmet that I bought from them. I'm a huge believer in Pristine and their business. There's no better evidence than what is over my right shoulder in this video, and that's the autographed Joey Logano helmet. I know some of you have even noticed it and commented on it in the last week since it appeared after his win at Atlanta. I bought it from Pristine. These guys have a great selection of NASCAR memorabilia, including autographed helmets, die-cast, and even pieces of art from drivers both past and present. But Pristine's selection certainly isn't limited to NASCAR. They have college football, NFL, NBA, MLB, and much more. If you're in the market for adding some cool items to your man cave or game room, go check out the description and the link that takes you straight to their site. And for Beating and Banging fans, you can save $10 off your first purchase. Thanks to Pristine for sponsoring this video and for the great products, which, by the way, I'll be having more giveaways from them in the future. And now let's jump into our first story, and it's what I promoted in Friday's video when I shared my top 3 things from the first 100 races of the next-gen Gen 7 car. As I mentioned, I asked that question to drivers and others in the industry, including NASCAR. Here's what they had to say, starting with reigning Cup Series champion Ryan Blaney.
Everybody, well, we are headed to the 100th race with the next gen. It's been a different, almost 3 years now, but I'd say a few of my favorites about it is I think the raceability on mile and a half has gotten better, which is great. We put on some good shows. We've won a championship with it, so that's nice. And then I also think kind of the parity you see is good, you know, between larger teams, smaller teams, you see all that. So I think that's definitely gotten better with the next gen.
All right, 3 impressions of the next gen car now that we are 100 points paying races into it. I think we've all learned that the biggest thing is the parity that we've seen with this car. It's really brought all the teams really close in speed. I think everyone likes the design of the cars. They look cool. I think they look really, really neat. The design of them, how close they are to what the street vehicle looks like. I know that was a key point. And I think the other thing is the durability of the car, right? We've seen how tough the car is. They beat and bang a lot more. We go to different racetracks now that we didn't race at before. I think those are the 3 main standouts of the vehicle.
3 things that come to mind with the next gen car after 100 races. The first of which has to be the pit stops. That's really changed kind of our athletic department and what pit roads look like and what it takes to do a fast stop. To me, it defined my rookie season. I was always told it was either going to be the best year to be a rookie or the worst year to rookie, and I think it was both. So I feel like really trying to figure out the balance of how do I be a Cup Series driver versus how do I just figure out this car on the fly, and which am I doing better is really something that was a challenge for the first year. And other than that, I think it's just brought the field so close together. The separation between the best cars and the worst cars is probably the closest it's ever been. So it's been fun and it's been interesting to watch the evolution.
For me, number 1 of the 3 would be how close and competitive the field is. Everyone is within a certain small lap time amount, so it really makes execution matter in the races. So that's always stuck out. On top of that, I think it's put on really good races in the mile and a half category. It's been a lot of fun being 3-4 wide at places like Kansas or other similar racetracks where you have a lot of options. So that's been really fun. And then I'd say number 3 is just how hard you can drive these next gen cars really sticks out to me. You think about driving in Martinsville, having to drive into every corner as far as you can, downshift, go around the corner, just wheeling this thing and then upshift again and do it all over for a ton of laps, and just kind of extrapolate that to all the different racetracks we go to. It's been pretty wild to see how hard you can drive these cars and how much fun that is.
Being stuck with flat tires is like P1 top of the board. But yeah, there's been some great racing. Obviously the intermediate racing has been great, so that would be number 2. And then winning would be number 3. 2 wins with the next gen car. Not enough, but gonna go get more.
When I think of the first 100 next gen races, I think about a big change in the sport. Definitely much different on the technology side, the way the car drives, and then just different strategy, the way the races play out is much different than it used to be. And then I think about a car that is very dynamic, can race on street courses and lots of different tracks.
All right, here we are, Jeff Cordero, front tire changer on the number 24 Chevrolet for Hendrick Motorsports, driven by William Byron. So we're 100 races into the next gen car. When it comes to pit stops have changed a lot over the years. One of the biggest things that we had to learn how to do was change a 1-lug tire. Before it was always 5-lug, and we always changed everything. We had a right-hand trigger. Everything was pretty similar. Everyone did it the same way. Well, once we went to 1-lug, everyone had to relearn how to change tires because we're all fighting for tenths of seconds, because that matters the most. So pit stops used to be about 11.5, 12 seconds, and now we're down in the low 8s, flirting with the 9s. We're living that range. So a lot has changed in 100 races. It's been a lot of us to adjust, but it's definitely been a challenge, but we've definitely overcome it and can't wait forward to look and see what the next 100 races has to come with the next gen car.
When you ask me about any race car, my first thoughts are going to go to safety and then the racing. So when you ask me about the first 100 races of next gen, I'm going to think of Kurt Busch suffering a concussion on a crash that many people thought wasn't so severe. Of course, it's probably accumulation of crashes, but certainly that comes to mind. And then you look at Ryan Preece's flip at Daytona and his ability to get out of the car and race the next week. And then when you talk about the racing, I think of the success on the 1.5 miles and the struggles on the short tracks. And of course, some of the great finishes that have been produced by this.
Just to keep it strictly to the safety side of things, some of the bigger crashes that we've seen, Priest at Daytona with a multiple rollover event and some pretty big loads into the chassis and roll cage, where the car was able to do its job. Felt confident in the car with all the testing and design, but it proved out there in that situation. Some of the larger crashes we've had into safer barrier, like Ryan Blaney at Daytona a few times, or others at some of the other tracks. Ross Chastain out at Fontana early on during practice. We've just had some really big crashes, historically large for us, and the drivers and the car have tolerated those well. So I think that's been a really big positive for me. These really severe high-end crashes that drivers are doing well in, the car's performing well. So that'd be my first take on it. My third one would be just tweaks and changes we've made to the car over time.
Right.
I think trying to have one chassis that races Watkins Glen, Bristol, Dover, Daytona, Talladega, Martinsville was a challenge for Dallara and the whole design group. And as we've gained more and more crash data and had the drivers really help us with things like mouthpiece sensors and their feedback and their input, we've been able to make updates to the car through front and rear clip tweaks and design changes. A lot of that was a result of getting some real on-track data under our belt from a chassis standpoint.
Right.
There's always a tension in design between crash worthiness or crushing of the car to control acceleration versus the operating loads of the car. So being able to, jump curbs all day long at a road course, you can't be bending stuff.
Right.
But when you crash, you want things to bend in a controlled manner. And so as we got more and more data from the cars on track, from wheel force tests and real races and real crashes, we were able to go back and sort of fine tune some of the front and rear clip areas to improve crash acceleration management. So that'd be my second one, just continuing to learn, continuing to apply improvements. And then I think my third one would be, well, I don't know, it's not particularly car focused, but it was a renewed emphasis on driver restraint. We put a lot of time and effort into developing new rear impact head foam, and that was available to drivers starting in January. Lots of drivers have taken advantage of that, and that has showed really good improvements. We've done a lot more emphasis with preseason at shop meetings, where we go, NASCAR comes to the shop, talk to the driver, the interior specialist, the crew chief, whoever wants to be there, and in many cases spend an hour and a half, 2-3 hours with the driver, going through their lap belts, their air submarine belts, negative G belts, shoulder belts, head and neck restraints, helmet, head surround foam, just sort of getting all of that optimized for the driver when you have the time to do it. It's really hard to do that at the racetrack, where everyone's focused on the weekend's event. So the last 2 years, we've put a lot of time into doing that with teams, making all the safety officials available to do that. And so I guess my third point is just sort of an overall renewed approach to the driver restraint system as a whole. I think this will be the 2025 season will be my 20th year here at NASCAR. And some of it, what we're seeing, particularly in trucks and Xfinity, is sort of putting together the greatest hits of things we've done over the last 15 years or so from a restraint standpoint. Things that when we introduced them 15 years ago were adapted and put into place. But now, as new drivers and teams have come through the system, it's having to sort of re-explain why we do that this way, or why is it important to have it this way. Just like a car setup where every detail and nuance matters, it's the same way with the restraint system. So I think just keeping that fresh in everyone's minds and in all the teams and drivers and interior specialists' minds is important.
You can't help but laugh with Alex Bowman and his first thought hilariously being about getting stuck on flat tires and not concussions. I'm sure you noticed many responses were similar or the same as mine, including parity, 1.5 mile tracks in the good racing, and close finishes. I also found John Padillac's answer really interesting on how NASCAR has been working with the teams on new rear impact head foam. Just an FYI, I'm working on a full interview with John in the future that is more extensive on the general safety of the sport and the things NASCAR is doing to make it safer. I want to thank John, the drivers, Jeff, and Bob for their participation in the video. Expect more of these types of stories in the future. And now, let's move on to the driver media availabilities, and there's really just one I want to highlight this week. It comes from Joey Logano and his response when asked how the Fords have undeniably been the top manufacturer in the last 16 races, with 9 wins from 7 different drivers in 4 different organizations during that time. An incredible turnaround for the Blue Ovals after that ugly start of going winless in the first dozen races.
Yeah, the panic set in, I think, within the first 8 weeks. The panic set in. Over the offseason, new car and all the numbers look great. But then when you get on the racetrack and the numbers don't translate, right? There's a lot of different variables on the reasons why that is. and learning that, boy, we got a lot of work to do. Like, this isn't everything it was cracked up to be. There's a lot to do here. And I think everyone's done a good job at one, accepting that, and two, going to work to fix it. And everyone's done a good job at moving the needle and getting us closer.
Panic no more after his win last week at Atlanta and Buescher's win at Watkins Glen. 9 wins in the last 16 races. That's really impressive stuff. Now, let's move on to Sunday. And after the pre-race ceremonies, while drivers were sitting in their cars, the television audience at home watched what appeared to be a normal camera shot, a close-up of Ty Gibbs sitting in his car before his team secured his window net. Normal until it wasn't, when the driver unexpectedly pushed the camera away. The first thing that came to my mind was why? Whether Gibbs was being funny or aggressive, it doesn't really matter. The camera operators have a job to do, and they do it each and every weekend before the race with numerous cooperative drivers who know the camera serves a purpose and they don't touch it and interfere with a person's job. However, for those who followed Gibbs closely, they know this isn't the first time he's done that. He did it in October 2022 before the Xfinity Series race at Talladega, where he was even more aggressive and pushed away the camera multiple times. It just really makes no sense as to why he would do that. Now, let's go to the drop of the green flag, and to be honest, I was really looking forward to seeing if there was as much tire fall off as had been predicted. There wasn't. But the race turned out to be quite unpredictable and entertaining, starting on lap 1 with a crash in the bus stop as cars entered 2 by 2, when Corey LaJoie hit the curbing and shot out wide into Kyle Busch, sending him for a spin before he clipped Christopher Bell. Denny Hamlin, Ryan Preece, and Ryan Blaney were also involved. Blaney got the worst of it, and it broke his steering and unexpectedly ended his day. He finished last. A few minutes later, Busch asked his team what had happened over the team radio, and they didn't sugarcoat the answer, including team owner Richard Childress.
Being idiot, who is the biggest idiot for me? Oh, just the same one that took you out at Pocono. You gotta be fucking kidding me. Nope, not kidding. Seven. So you watch on the replay, I mean, you left plenty of room to the left. It looked like you used too much curb and you got loose and overcorrected and just whacked the shit out of you. I can confirm the whack.
How much time do you have? That 11 car was in here a good 2 minutes or longer after you guys were.
I also included that part with Richard Childress calling out the number 11 team for their pit stop to fix the damage. Hey, it's competition. If you feel like your competition is gaining an advantage, you're going to notice it and point it out. When the race restarted, Ross Chastain led the first 17 laps until he pitted before the stage end. Truex took advantage of the strategy, stayed out, and won the stage. He was followed by Alex Bowman, Chase Briscoe, Daniel Suarez, and Austin Cindric. In stage 2, Tyler Reddick went for a spin early, and then it became the Ross Chastain and Shane van Gisbergen show. The 2 Trackhouse cars stayed up front several seconds clear of third place and the rest of the field. At that point, it really looked like Chastain and SVG were the cars to beat, and they would be in position to race for the win heading to the end of stage 2. Then, the one thing that they didn't want to happen with their strategy did happen, when Trackhouse teammate Daniel Suarez got stuck in the gravel and brought out the caution with 2 laps to go, after numerous other cars had pitted. First, the defending champion and Hamlin are involved in incidents on lap 1, then Suarez late in stage 2. Playoff drivers were having issues. There was more where that came from on the ensuing pit cycles, with both Kyle Larson and Brad Keselowski getting busted for speeding and pit box violations. Keselowski also had a loose wheel. Here's what Larson said about his issue over the team radio.
I mean, yeah, I'm sorry because I'm not even, it's hard to see that orange box when it's in your right front versus left front. I thought I was being extremely cautious, but I guess not.
Fast forward to early in that third stage, and the theme continued when 3 of the same playoff drivers were involved in contact in turn 2. The race remained caution-free for the next 30 laps. After all the pit stops cycled through, Chris Buescher cycled to the front and held a 4+ second lead on Van Gisbergen. Then, with 10 laps to go, tire debris from Harrison Burton brought out a yellow. On the restart with 7 laps to go, Buescher took the inside of row 1 with Carson Hocevar on the outside. Lining up directly behind the number 17 was Van Gisbergen. The cars didn't make it a lap around the track when two more playoff drivers, Keselowski and William Byron, were involved in a scary incident where the number 24 car climbed up on the left side of the number 6 car and stopped. Keselowski spotter TJ Majors didn't hesitate to point the finger at his former driver for causing the crash.
Yeah, definitely just cleaned out by Joey, 100%.
That brought us to another restart with 3 laps to go, and it was the same lineup as the previous one, with Buescher the control car and Van Gisbergen right behind him. The RFK racing car got out in front with Hocevar and SVG right behind. And then another caution. Except there was some question if there needed to be one, as Kyle Busch and Tyler Reddick got together, but both of their cars were able to roll away. Here's the number 17 team radio after that happened.
You're doing great. I know this is ridiculous. Professional drivers at the highest level that have a hard time making a lap on these things, but you're doing a great job, man. Stay calm and cool. I feel like they're changing their mentality on when to throw the flag. I mean, everybody drove away from that. It's a massive road course, and yet they threw the flag early. I'm not quite sure why the mindset changed now.
Yeah, everybody was continued to roll straight, even though they were wrecking. There was no debris on the racetrack that I saw, so I thought that one should have stayed.
The inconsistency, man, it's been there all year. I don't understand it.
Consistently inconsistent. Where have I heard that before? In overtime, and what turned out to be the final restart, SVG made contact with Buescher just enough going into turn 1 that he could slide by on the inside and take the lead. The Kiwi made a trip around the track and took the white flag, seemingly destined for his second Cup win. Then, surprisingly, going into the bus stop for a final time with the number 17 on his rear bumper, SVG made an unforced error and clipped the wall. That contact slowed the number 16 car just enough to allow Buescher to get on his rear bumper and return the favor, moving him just enough to slide underneath and take the lead. The Texan held on for the final turns and finally earned that winner's sticker he so desperately wanted, and more significantly, played the role of spoiler in the playoffs. The top 10 was interesting to say the least, including all 3 Spire Motorsports cars, with Hocevar in 3rd, Zane Smith in 5th, and Corey LaJoie in 8th. Also notable, Chase Briscoe finished 6th, Michael McDowell finished 7th, Ryan Preece finished 9th, and Austin Cindric finished 10th. What's interesting is last week at Atlanta, there was one non-playoff driver who finished inside the top 10, and that was Kyle Busch. This week, there were only 2 playoff drivers who finished inside the top 10, and it's not the ones most would have expected in Briscoe and Cindric. There wasn't a single Toyota inside the top 10. The highest finishing Toyota belonged to Christopher Bell, who finished 14th. One Toyota driver, Martin Truex Jr., had some pointed words in his post-race interview about the racing at the end and echoed what Chris Buescher's team said over the radio a few minutes earlier.
All these races always come down to this, and I don't really understand, how guys can call themselves, the best in the world when they just drive through everyone on restarts at the end of these races. So it's very frustrating, but it is what it is these days, so I'm out of here.
MTJ not sugarcoating what's on his mind. I can't help but wonder if we'll get more candid comments from him as his final season winds down over the next 8 weeks. I'm not going to go into details on the playoff picture, but after Watkins Glen, I did want to highlight the top 4. With Logano advanced to the round of 12 following his win at Atlanta, Christopher Bell leads in points at plus 46, followed by Austin Cindric plus 43, Alex Bowman plus 41, and Daniel Suarez plus 36. I think it's really interesting how a lot of folks picked Cindric, Bowman, and Suarez to get eliminated in the first round. Again, I want to thank Pristine Marketplace for sponsoring this video. Remember, if you're in the market to add some great items to your game room or man cave, Pristine is the place to do it, with a massive selection of signed NASCAR memorabilia, as well as autographed items from other sports like college football, NFL, NBA, and MLB. And for Beating and Banging fans, you will receive $10 off your first purchase. There's a link in the description. Use promo code BB10. Speaking of Pristine, I'm going to give the Kevin Harvick helmet winner one more chance to claim his prize, and if I don't hear from him by the end of this week, I'll be putting it back out there for someone else to take home. The winner is at William Harrell 8349. William, please reply to this video, because if you don't, I'm pretty sure there's plenty of folks who will gladly take the Harvick helmet. All right, guys, that's a wrap on this episode. I want to hear your thoughts. First, what did you think of the drivers and the others in the industry and their thoughts on their first 100 races in the next-gen Gen 7 car? Any surprises in there? Anything you think they missed? Moving on to Sunday's Cup race, actually before it, what did you think about Ty Gibbs pushing away the camera, especially knowing he's done it before? And as far as the race is concerned, what did you think about so many playoff drivers encountering trouble? Honestly, I wasn't sure about Watkins Glen being in the playoffs, but I think it more than delivered in the on-track chaos and unexpected final results. Thanks as always for supporting the channel. I really do appreciate it, and I really read all your feedback. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.